This video is the fourth in a series of video lessons for the grade 12 English home language students within the IEB curriculum. The lessons are to be used in the fourth genre option, which includes film study. This lesson explains what is meant by the term mise-en-scene. When artists write books, plays, make films, take photographs or paint pictures, they have something very specific in mind. They create their works of art for us, the viewer, the reader, to absorb, to analyze, to appreciate, to enjoy. In visual arts, like movie making, the creator or the director has to transfer the images from his or her head to the screen. And this isn't as easy as it sounds. Here's an example. If I say the word tree to you, what image comes to mind? Something like this, perhaps. It's lovely, isn't it? What about this? Ew, that's creepy. You can see that the choices that have been made by the photographers have had an impact on the way that you, the viewer, sees these images. Imagine that you are a film director and your script writer has written the direction "man leaning against a wall." What picture would you have in your head? Something like this. Or was your man younger? What about this? It's obvious that these three men are very different in terms of the way they are dressed, their body postures, the types of wall against which they are leaning, and even the choice of colors that has been used for each picture. All of these decisions that a director makes about what the audience sees on the screen is part of the mise-en-scene. The expression itself is French, and a direct translation to English is placing on stage. A quick definition of mise-en-scene for our purposes is this. It's the arrangement of the scenery, props, etc. on set. It describes everything in the filmed image, including settings, props, lighting, costumes, makeup, actors, and cinematography. Some of you might be familiar with a quote by playwright Anton Chekhov, who said, "If there's a gun hanging on the wall in the first scene, it must be fired in the last." He means that every item that is on your set must be there for a reason. It must be carefully selected and used to create meaning for your audience. In great films, we must assume that every element has meaning. Look at this still from the 1941 film Citizen Kane. What do you see? Well, it's black and white. The man at the podium is dwarfed by the poster behind him. In the foreground, at the bottom of the still, are men, very small. By showing you men in three different sizes on one still, the viewer can make assumptions about who is in power and who is in a position of weakness. Many of you will be familiar with the novel The Great Gatsby and will have watched the 2013 movie version from which a still is shown on this slide. Take a moment to absorb what you see, the mise-en-scene. A lady standing closest to the camera. Look at her body language. Arm bent with hand on hip, a rather imperious expression on her face. Look at what she's wearing. A dress typical of the 1920s with a rather low-cut neckline, and she has a fashionably bobbed haircut. There are four characters behind her. a seated man and 3 standing. In the distance, through the double doors, you can see people in an outer room. Take note of the picture composition. The round mat in a round room. The colours, they're fairly muted, apart from the mat, with shades of cream and gold. The costumes, furnishings and artwork ensure that we note that these are people of great wealth. The net curtains are billowing into the room. As a viewer, you should ask what these details convey to you. What assumptions are you making about these characters? Who they are, and where they are? And were you observant? Did you see this? And what do you make of that? You are, in essence, reading the scene in front of you, making use of your ability to decode images and colors as opposed to reading words. Some of you will be doing the superhero option in the 4th genre. Here's a still from the film V for Vendetta. Spend time studying the mise-en-scene, the shape of the room, with its vaulted ceiling, the museum-type artifacts in the room, the beautiful Persian rug on the floor, the way that the lighting is used to highlight the artworks. There are even paintings hanging on the ceilings. Did you notice the grand piano, the candelabra on the piano? For those of you who have watched the film or read the graphic novel, you'll know the significance of these beautiful pieces of furniture and artwork. They are being kept safe by V, the costumed man on the left, who appears to be jousting with a suit of armor on the right, which is in itself a significant image in the film. It's important to note the rule of thirds when you are analyzing a picture. Imagine that the image is divided into 9 squares, like this. Do you see how your eye is drawn to the center point, following the road? What about this image from the 2019 Oscar award-winning film The Joker? You'll note how your eyes are drawn down the stairs to the main character on the right. You should also take in the way he's dressed, his makeup, and the way that he's standing, or actually dancing, down these stairs. Here's an example from The Hurt Locker. Again, pause the video and study the still. Look at the figure walking towards the camera. What is he wearing? Where is he walking? Are those tracks? Look behind him, the type of buildings. On the left, you should see the burned out remains of cars and trucks. And do you see the group of men gathered on the left? There are other details, the Arabic writing on the sign on the left, the satellite dish on the right. Even the cloudless sky conveys meaning to the viewer. Are you able to read this scene accurately? Here's another still from The Hurt Locker. Pause the video and read the scene. The man in the supermarket is the same character that you saw in the previous slide. Here he is in a very different world, an American supermarket, in the cereal aisle. In the previous still, he was approaching the camera. Here he's retreating. Why? As you study the scene, use your knowledge about camera shots and angles to understand the message that the director conveys to you. This is one of the most important moments in the film. What is the director telling us about this character's journey from a war zone to suburban life. This image is taken from 0:30. Look at the positioning of the flag in the dominant left half of the still. What is the effect of the woman's silhouette on the glass of the framed flag? What does her body language say? Those arms folded defensively in front of her. And what about the practicality of her hair tied in a functional ponytail? Also take note of the wooden panelled walls and the reflection on her identity tag, which is fastened to her hip. This one is also from 0:30. It's a still from the end of the film with the same character that we saw in the previous slide. Look at her now, not nearly as composed and determined as she was when we saw her in front of the American flag. Here she's clearly in tears and her hair is loose. What effect does the difference in her hairstyle have on us, the viewer? Do you agree that here she looks more vulnerable? And what of the background? Where is she seated? Those of you who have watched the film will recognize this as the back of a military aircraft with the cargo straps and padding behind her. These material bars in a deep maroon color seem to have the character imprisoned. All of the scenes that we have looked at are carefully composed. Directors use the mise-en-scene as an integral part of the storytelling mechanisms at their disposal. To summarize, there are 5 key elements to mise-en-scene: the location, set design, props. The Statue of Liberty in a dominant position shows us that the setting is the United States. Composition, framing, angles. Here's a shot of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, taken through an archway. Lighting. The sinister shadow effect here emphasizes the knife in the character's hand. Acting movement, facial expressions. The iconic picture of Marilyn Monroe's character in the 1954 film, The 7-Year Itch. Makeup and costume. Most of you will remember the stunning transformation of Nanny McPhee in the 2005 film of the same name. From this video lesson, you should now have a good idea of what the mise-en-scene is and be able to deconstruct any image from a film that is given to you. This video series deals with the technical and more generic aspects of film study, so you'll be able to apply them to any of the films which you have selected for your 4th genre. Should you have any queries, please feel free to contact me using the email address that you see on the screen.